good. How the heck are you? Hey, this is going to be a GMO update. I think I'm going to title it "Everything You're Being Told Is a Lie" about Roundup Herbicide. And gosh, they've moved past Roundup now. They've moved on to dicamba, but it's still a Roundup mix. So, got some more information come in. I put it in the GMO series, and folks need to start waking up. This guy even had a little more information, which is sad. It's really sad. So, hey, without further ado, let's get on with this. See you in a second. Tennessee Homestead. How the heck you doing today? Okay. This is going to be some more information brought out on the GMO and Roundup herbicides. I was reading an article, an interview that was done recently with a gentleman he's a genetic engineer, retired. Okay. I said in the earlier videos, it seems like as these clowns retire, they suddenly start telling the truth, and the truth maybe it'll set you free. Okay, and you're going to get to see me in my specs because not to misquote these folks, I definitely will probably be reading excerpts of it. Basically, and you'll find this in some of the previous GMO information, he started getting involved in his research a little deeper whenever the World Health Organization came out and said, hey, GMO products are, definitely a carcinogenic to humans. According to what he had been taught, supposedly, that just can't be the case. So he went back into research mode. But, the fact of the matter is that indeed that's what they came up with. And the thing that amazes me is that when the UN did this, they had many countries get involved with the research that had good standing cancer research programs going and limited contacts, you might say, with Mother Monsanto, thus keeping their involvement into the whole thing down a little bit. Now, this may get a little lengthy, but I really want you to hear what this guy has to say. Okay? So, let me begin. Basically, it was asking him the hows and whys he got involved in doing more research on glyphosate. Now, he was a microbiologist. He was involved in GMOs, not the herbicides. Okay, keep that in mind. It said, in school, I learned about agriculture and the damage caused by all sorts of pests and pathogens, such as insects, fungal diseases, so forth. I learned to deal with those pests by sterilizing the soil or spraying pesticides. Halfway through my career, it became obvious that perhaps we should intervene at the molecular level to make crops naturally resistant to pests, thus his interest in GMOs. So I learned molecular biology and became a genetic engineer. Then I became the head of the molecular biology department and took it as my responsibility to educate people and try to assuage their fears of genetic engineering. Yeah, nothing to see here, folks. Move along. I retired 12 years ago and started gardening as a serious hobby. So I decided to learn something about agriculture. After gaining that hands-on experience, I realized how much damage pesticides cause to the living environment of the soil. I learned all sorts of things that I wasn't taught in graduate school. For example, I learned that not only pesticides, but also regular chemical fertilizers damage the community of microorganisms in the soil. I became organic, so to speak. At that point, I started reading scientific research showing the problems with genetic engineering. Some of us didn't have to wait till then, but okay, so the rest of these are going to be questions and how he answered those questions. One of the questions posed to him, what is the current allowable amounts of glyphosate in food and water? And how do they compare with the levels which scientists are detecting its harmful effects? Now this one, if you go back in some of my previous GMO information, you'll find that when the FDA approved back in the 70s for Roundup usage, they had two levels, a 0.5 parts per million, up to 1 point per million. That was the maximum that they would allow in food. All right? With those figures in mind, let's move on. Most other pesticides and herbicides are closely monitored by government agencies in Canada and the United States. But for some reason, glyphosate residues have not been monitored closely. Ooh, I know the answer to this one. Let me spell it to you. Money. Apply enough money, and they go away. Monsanto learned this early on. What we do know is that the legal levels allowed by the Environmental Protection Agency, now folks, it's out of the FDA's hands anymore. It's now the EPA. And Health Canada have increased significantly over the past few years, presumably to accommodate for the new reality. The allowable levels are now well above parts per million. Every single crop has an allowable level. Allowable level for glyphosate residue in sugar, 10 parts per million. Soybean and canola, 20 parts per million. Cereals, that includes wheat, rice, oats, okay? 30 parts per million. And this is the one that you really got to think about every time when you had your nice little backyard barbecue, frying up those store-bought hamburgers and so forth. Yeah. Okay. Non-grass fed animals. 400 parts per million. That's what went into your meat, folks. Residual levels that were once considered extreme are now seen as normal. A large number of published scientific studies, mostly done outside the United States, show that as little as 1 part per million of glyphosate will kill most all bacteria, particularly the beneficial bacteria in the gut of animals that where this endocrine disruption begins at 0.5 parts per million. Here again, the FDA said safe to these levels. And that is and that even a few parts per million can cause what they call oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, DNA damage, and many other disruptions in the mammal's organs, cells, and tissue. Wow. Whoops. Another question they asked was, Monsanto, the company that owned the glyphosate patent, claims that humans can digest glyphosate in our food and water and it won't accumulate in our bodies. Is this true? Simple question. That's what Monsanto's been saying all along. Let's see how this fellow that made a career of this, what he has to say. Recent scientific studies clearly show that glyphosate does not degrade easily in soil or in humans or animals. Glyphosate accumulates in all organs, liver, kidneys, intestines, heart, lungs, bones, and so on, of animals and people eating food products made from Roundup Ready crops. Son of a gun. The research is out there, folks. Our government has just chose to ignore it. Okay? But one of the things that they're talking about here is a lot of chemicals, and this is how they're going to sell non-GMO products to you. Oats. Companies will tell you a lot of times non-GMO. Okay. Rice, non-GMO. Sugarcane, non-GMO. All these, they're non-GMO. All right. This guy even says the GMO is least of your worries with this stuff. GMOs are relatively benign when it comes to their health risks as a product. As the GMO, pure GMO coming out of that scientific lab. What the problem is what it's grown in and how it's grown. There's where the problems come in. Now, let me talk to you a bit. I'm not going to go into this word for word, but they have, in the past 15 years, they've used glyphosate as a drying agent. Okay? They call it a chemical drying. And they use it widely on sugar. They use it widely on grains, seeds, such as your cereals, beans, sunflowers, and so forth. They use glyphosate to spray the crop to kill it. It also kills the weeds in the crop, makes it easier for them to harvest it. Okay? The process is called chemical drying. A lot of your processed foods are chemically dried. But they can still sell it to you as non-GMO. It doesn't tell you that the damaging part of this stuff is already there. It's been sprayed with it. As I said, sugar, 10 parts per million. Okay. And I'm not going to read this whole article because it's numerous pages long. But here's what was their next question. We were surprised to learn that glyphosate was also patented as an antibiotic. If you'd seen our earlier GMO stuff, you'd have known that. But yeah, they tried to get it as an antibiotic here in this country. It is patented as an antibiotic, but the FDA would not approve it to be used on humans as an antibiotic. Primarily because, son of a gun, it wipes out the good bacteria in your body, just leaving the pathogens left there, and you suddenly have all these health issues. Doggone it. But for some reason, it's okay in the food. His answer is, I call glyphosate an antibiotic masquerading as a herbicide. Aside from its function as a disruptor and the multitude of other documented nefarious effects that it has on human physiology. Yeah, can't pronounce that word right. I think the most immediate concern is the damaging effect on the human microorganisms. I don't remember seeing much research on the effects of glyphosate in the soil and the environment. I have got that out there in another video where the research is out there, and yes, it is damaging. But he goes on to say, other than the usual industry-sponsored and reassuring results, plenty of anecdotal evidence, however, shows that damaging the soil's microbiology leads to a slow desertification, more or less kills the soil. Well, sorry, Doc, whenever you stopped your research, you should have looked a little closer. That evidence is in. And yes, you're killing the soil. Thus, the spread of a lot of these funguses, the spread of a lot of these new diseases in crops. Yeah. So, there you have it. He retired 12 years ago. And he decided to become a gardener. And he discovered this stuff is bad news. Now he understands how bad. But it was interesting that his quest began where he was looking at the simple fact of GMOs, the plant, should not be causing these problems. What's causing it? And as he went down the rabbit hole, folks, he discovered Roundup Herbicide. Here's the next kicker. The glyphosate that he's talking about is not the most dangerous part of Roundup Herbicide. It's those little inert ingredients that so far only one French researcher has really dug into it to find out even what was in Roundup, and discovered that these inert ingredients that nobody has tested on the human body, were far more dangerous than glyphosate. Far more dangerous. And now he's telling us that your EPA and Health Canada, if you're a Canadian, and I'm sure some of the UE organizations, from what research I had found, they're doing pretty much the same thing, are raising the levels of what's allowable in food. Why? Because it keeps them being able to sell their product. Okay? Because you can't get out there and kill, and he even cites in some of his conversation, the Roundup resistant weeds that have come along have created a monster for them because they're having to mix Roundup stronger and stronger and stronger to try to kill these weeds. It works for a while, and finally, if you take that stuff and spray it straight, which costs the farmer a fortune, but it does kill the weeds for a while. So these acceptable levels, I can almost guarantee you're being exceeded. Folks, y'all need to wake up. Okay? The CDC says that our life expectancy is getting shorter. They blame it on what we're eating. I can tell you firsthand, I noticed when I went back to buying and eating food out of a grocery store that I've had some real physical problems. I've had some health issues that re-arose in my life that I gotten rid of years back. All right? Think, people. You're the only ones that's going to stop this. Okay? You're the only ones that's going to stop it. You're going to need to become a single issue voter to a lot of these politicians by telling them, your federal level politicians, you're going to overturn this nonsense that you set up protecting Monsanto. You're going to write laws that if it's a GMO, not only just a GMO product, we want to know what herbicides have been applied to that food. It needs to be right on the label. We want to know. And if you're not willing to get on board with that, I'm going to vote you out of office. Become single issue voters. You're not going to poison us any further. And once you stand up, and once you start putting these politicians out on the curb, they're going to stop. And they're going to back up. And they're going to look at Monsanto and go, listen, kids, it's been nice while it went on, but these voters are really getting angry, and we can't back you any further. Now you got dicamba out there. That is pure poison. Folks, you're talking about the lives of your children and your grandchildren, not only your own life, but your children and your grandchildren. Think about that. We need to stop this stuff. And right now you can start, farmers markets are open, folks. There's produce out there, there's green beans out there, there's things you can buy to feed your family. Get out of the stores. Get out of the stores. They're killing you. You're buying your meat from stores. You need to stop it. 400 parts per million is what is acceptable in livestock that you're eating. When the EPA or the FDA, when they originally came out with this, said 0.5 parts per million. Not even 1 part per million was a safe level. All right? This man has admitted that the story that Monsanto's telling you, that this stuff does not build up and store up in your body, is a lie. It does. Research is showing it. Okay? It builds in your body. It stores in your liver. It stores, and I found a lot of research where all that extra body fat that I love it. I got a guy cutting grass right outside the window here. Bear with the noise for a moment. That research has shown that when your liver has had its microorganisms wiped out by the glyphosate, it begins to take that toxin and bundle it up as fat cells and start storing it around your midsection. How does obesity begin? There you go. Because your body is trying to say, we can't deal with this toxin, we can't release it into the blood, we have to store it. And so it begins storing fat. You've lost your microorganisms in your gut. All you've got left is pathogens. And guess what? What does pathogens want? Everything that is good for you is the opposite of what it craves. Sugars, starches, things of this nature. All right? You wonder why you want middle of the night instead of wanting to have something small salad to tide you over or something like this? No. You want a huge piece of chocolate cake and a big old glass of milk, or maybe even a milkshake to go with it. You want sugars, you want starches. It's because the things that are now controlling your body, that is sending the signal to your brain of what you want to eat, are pathogens. And that's what they want. And it is not good for you. And as you feed it to them, they grow and they multiply. And you even get stronger cravings. You wonder why we have an obese society? Ta-ta. Okay? Stand up and fight, folks. You better get the heck out of those stores. I wish this guy would get the heck around from cutting around the house with his lawnmower right now. Can't complain, he cuts rarely. But these are things to think about. And here again, another microbiologist comes out and goes, yeah, now that I've retired, let me tell you the truth. That is the truth, folks. This stuff's bad. It's dangerous. It's killing you. Time to get out of the stores. This is Rick Tissing Homestead. I'll probably put this as one of the GMOs and save it. If you guys haven't looked through that GMO playlist, you really need to. It's long, gets growing longer by the month, and it's sad. But there's a truckload of information right down to why. Why would they do this? You'll see they have a plan. You need to understand it because it'll make you get very serious about stopping it. Hope you guys are having a great week, and I love and appreciate you. Wake up. Truly, wake up. Have a great week.